Hey everybody, this is Alan Moore, certified financial planner and founder of Serenity Financial Consulting. Thanks for joining me. So most of my clients have a 401k through their employer, and yet very few of them have ever received education, information, or recommendations on how to invest within their 401k. People ask me all the time how they should make investment choices because they've never been educated or told. So 401ks can come in a lot of different forms, and they can have a lot of different options. Many times companies will offer company stock in the 401k as well as a handful of mutual funds. Other times they'll actually have what's called a brokerage link so that you can actually invest in any mutual fund in pretty much in the market. Those usually come with additional fees. So you'll have to talk with your HR department to figure out what your actual options are. But here are just a few do's and don'ts to kind of help you get started. The first one is do not invest in your company stock. Why? Because your greatest asset is your ability to earn money. It's your ability to earn income. Unless you're, about to retire, then this is usually the case for most people. So you're depending on your job for basically your greatest asset. Do you really want to depend on your company for your retirement as well? So if your company disappears tomorrow, it suddenly, goes out of business, goes bankrupt, you lose your job, you're already losing your income. You do not want to also lose your retirement plan as well. The 401k doesn't go away, but if you're invested in your company stock, and the company stock goes down, then suddenly you don't have any investments anymore because they've gone away. So I highly recommend do not invest in your company stock. Stay away from it, okay? The second don't is don't select every investment option. So many times a 401k will have, let's say, 10 investment options. And so people will go, well, I don't know which one to choose. So they just select all 10 and put 10% in each one. While this may feel like you're diversifying, you don't know what those actual funds are. So let's say 8 of those funds are all invested in U.S. stocks. Well, now 80% of your portfolio is in one asset class, which is really undiversified. And truth be told, a lot of those funds probably have a lot of crossover. And so you may own, a single company in a lot of those or whatnot. So there can be a lot of problems with that. So I see it all the time. Definitely do not do this. So one of the do's, now that we've talked about the don'ts, a do is check the expense ratios. So each mutual fund charges an expense ratio, which is effectively a management and operation fee. This is your way of paying the mutual fund manager and company for having the fund, and that's fine. They're all going to have an expense ratio, and that's okay. But expense ratios vary widely among funds. They can be very, very low, like with Vanguard funds, or very high, such as with active management funds. Just remember that your expense ratio is a direct deduction off your return. So if you have a 1% expense ratio fee, then essentially you're getting 1% less in the market, whether it's up or down. So if it's down, it's causing your returns to be even lower. So definitely pay attention to the expense ratios. I want to see them less than 0.4%, lower if possible, but usually higher expense ratios indicate an actively managed fund, which we want to stay away from as well. And that kind of leads into the next do, which is do invest in index funds. So most 401ks these days have options such as Vanguard funds, which are index funds, as well as others. Sometimes they can be a little hard to spot. They'll usually have a benchmark or an index such as the S&P 500 or EFI or something like that in the title. Sometimes you got to dig a little deeper to figure out to be sure it's actually an index fund. You can usually see these pretty quickly by lower expense ratios. So I don't know that I've ever seen or rarely seen an index fund with high expense ratios. So the lower they are, the better. Usually is a pretty good indicator. So the final do is do consult an investment advisor. Now, I wish I could tell you that I can just lay out 4, 5, 6 tips and you would be able to manage your own 401k and know you're set up for success. But unfortunately, it's not that easy. There are a lot, I won't say a lot, there are some investment advisors now that work on an hourly basis, so they'll actually be able to sit down and just consult with you on your 401k as well as your portfolio as a whole and be sure you're on track. I highly recommend that you do this from time to time because they can help be sure that you don't have any blind spots and that your emotions aren't getting in the way of you making the best financial decisions for your retirement. So what do you think? Have you ever actually received assistance with your 401k investments? Have you ever had questions that you weren't able to answer? Does this post help? Do you have any additional questions? Definitely feel free to share in the comment section. That's all I have for today. Thanks so much for joining me.